He lost everything the moment he followed her. The Mafia boss followed his maid. What he saw made him break down. In the neon rain, Damien Cross watched his maid wrap her arms around a man Marco Vallon had already marked for death. Her secret brother, her only family, her fatal weakness. Now Marco has leverage. Damien has a target on his heart. And if he breathes wrong, Lena Hart disappears forever. So tell me, when the king finally cracks, who pays the price? It started days before the street scene. He had noticed Lena Hart long before she knew he was watching. At first, she was just the new maid. Agnes Reed, his retiring housekeeper, had recommended her. Young, quiet, efficient, discreet. He valued discreet. She arrived on time, kept to her quarters. Didn't ask questions about the men in tailored suits who sometimes showed up with blood on their knuckles. But then she kept doing something unusual. She smiled at Ray Doyle, the doorman. She chatted with Martha Lynn about recipes in the kitchen. She teased Tyler Graves, the driver, about his terrible taste in music. She even made Cole Mercer, his stone-faced security guard, laugh about something one afternoon. She never smiled at him. Around other people, she was light. Around him, she was professional, polite, invisible. That irritated him more than it should have. One afternoon, Damien stood in his glass office overlooking the penthouse, on a call with a contractor in Miami, when he heard it again. Her laugh. Not loud, but genuine. He glanced down through the second-floor railing. She was in the living room arranging flowers, saying something to Cole, who was checking camera feeds nearby. Cole grinned. Actually grinned. And she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. If this story already stirs something within you, take a moment to subscribe. Join our circle of faith, hope, and love. And drop a comment to tell us where you're watching from. Damien's jaw tightened. "Boss?" the voice on the phone prompted. "Nothing," he said coldly, forcing his attention back. "Wire the payment." But from that moment, he started tracking her in small ways. What time she arrived, what time she left, the way she hummed softly while dusting the bookshelves. He even noticed that every Wednesday, she left at exactly 8:05, like clockwork. On those nights, she glanced over her shoulder before slipping out the service entrance, like she had somewhere urgent to be. He didn't like that he was noticing. So when Wednesday came again and she left early, coat buttoned, hood up, moving faster than usual, he was already in the back seat of his black sedan across the street. Rico Vance sat beside him, scrolling through intel reports. "You want me to send someone to follow her?" "No," Damien said, eyes locked on Lena as she turned the corner. "I'll handle it." Rico looked up, eyebrows raised. "Since when do you tail staff?" "Since I said I'll handle it." Outside, the city glowed with wet asphalt and blurred neon. Lena walked like someone used to being alone. Fast, aware, but not paranoid. She stopped under a flickering streetlight, checked her phone, and looked around. Then he appeared. A young man in a hoodie and worn jeans appeared from the corner, backpack slung over one shoulder, grin wide and easy. He waved at her. She waved back. And then something in Damien's chest pulled tight. She jogged the last few steps and hugged him. The man's hand lingered on her shoulder, familiar, comfortable. "Who the hell is that?" Damien muttered, voice low and dangerous. Rico leaned forward, studying the scene. Could be a boyfriend. That was the wrong answer. Damien's hand gripped the door handle, knuckles white. Every instinct screamed at him to cross that street, to demand answers to... "Boss," Rico said carefully. "You're about to do something stupid." Damien forced his hand to relax, jaw clenched so tight it ached. He watched as Lena laughed at something the man said, watched as they walked together down the neon-lit street, watched until they disappeared around a corner. "Drive," he ordered. The ride back to the penthouse was silent except for the hum of rain against bulletproof glass. Rico said nothing, a rare mercy, but Damien could feel the weight of unspoken judgment radiating from the seat beside him. When they pulled up to the building, Rico finally spoke. "You know you're losing your edge over a woman you've never even had a real conversation with, right?" Damien's eyes went cold. "Careful. Just saying." Rico held up his hands. The great Damien Cross, rattled by his maid meeting some guy on a street corner. If Marco Vallon heard about this... "He won't." Damien cut him off, stepping out of the car. "Because you're going to keep your mouth shut." But Rico's words burrowed under his skin like shrapnel. Losing his edge. The idea was absurd. Offensive. He was Damien Cross. He'd built an empire from nothing. Survived wars most men didn't live to talk about. Commanded loyalty through fear and respect in equal measure. He did not get rattled by women. Except he had. Over the next week, Damien told himself he was being practical. He wasn't obsessing. He was observing. Gathering information. Understanding potential vulnerabilities in his household security. He noted that Lena arrived every morning at 6:45 a.m., always through the service entrance. She worked efficiently, never lingering, never snooping. She kept her head down around him, offering only polite nods and quiet good mornings that never quite met his eyes. That bothered him more than it should. Wednesday came again. She left at 8:05, same as before. Thursday, Friday, normal schedule. But every Wednesday, without fail, she moved faster, checked her phone more often, glanced at the clock like she was counting down to something. Or someone. Damien found himself manufacturing reasons to be in whatever room she was cleaning. He'd pour coffee in the kitchen while she restocked the cabinets. Review documents in the living room while she dusted the bookshelves. Each time she'd offer a polite smile. Professional, distant, forgettable. Nothing like the laugh she'd given that man on the street. "You're lurking again," Rico observed one afternoon, finding Damien standing in the hallway outside the study where Lena was working. "I'm not lurking. This is my house." "Right. And you just happen to be standing in this specific hallway, staring at a closed door for no reason." Damien shot him a look that would have made lesser men flinch. Rico just smirked. "I'm telling you. Boss, this obsession is going to bite you in the ass." "It's not an obsession." "Then what is it?" Damien didn't have an answer for that. The collision happened on a Thursday. Damien was coming out of his office, phone pressed to his ear, mind occupied with shipping routes and territory disputes. He didn't see Lena until she'd already rounded the corner, arms full of folded linens. They collided hard enough to send the linens tumbling. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Cross," she said, immediately dropping to gather the fallen sheets. Damien ended his call without a word, staring down at her. She moved quickly, efficiently, not a trace of fear in her movements. Most people trembled when they accidentally touched him. She just worked. "Here, let me..." He reached down to help and their hands brushed. She pulled back immediately, looking up at him for the first time in days. Her eyes were darker than he'd realized, flecked with gold in the afternoon light. There was something in them, sadness maybe, or exhaustion, that made his chest tighten inexplicably. "I've got it," she said softly, gathering the last of the linens and standing. "I should have been paying attention. It won't happen again." She moved to step past him, and he found himself blocking her path without conscious thought. "You're always in a hurry on Wednesdays," he said, voice rougher than intended. Her eyes widened slightly. What?" "You leave early every Wednesday. Same time. 8:05. A flicker of something crossed her face. Alarm. Or maybe defiance. I didn't realize you were keeping track of my schedule, Mr. Cross. I keep track of everything in my house. I see. She straightened her shoulders, meeting his gaze without flinching. I have personal matters to attend to on Wednesday evenings. If that's a problem, I can adjust. Personal matters. The words tasted bitter. With that man? The question escaped before he could stop it. Lena's eyebrows rose, confusion and something like amusement playing across her features. That's none of your business, Mr. Cross. She was right. It wasn't. But that didn't stop the jealous rage from clawing up his throat. You're right, he said, stepping aside. It's not. She nodded and moved past him, close enough that he caught the faint scent of her shampoo. Something clean and simple that shouldn't have affected him at all. It did. He watched her disappear down the hallway, fists clenched at his sides, feeling unmoored in his own home. Wednesday came again like a sentence. Damien told himself he wouldn't follow her. It was beneath him. Irrational. Exactly the kind of behavior that got powerful men killed. At 8:03, he was back in the sedan, Rico beside him wearing an expression somewhere between concern and exasperation. This is the definition of insanity, you know, Rico said. Shut up and drive. They followed the same route. Same streets, same neon reflections on wet pavement. Lena walked with purpose, hood up against the light rain. The young man appeared at the same corner. Same hoodie, same easy smile. But this time, something was different. As Damien watched from the shadows across the street, the man doubled over, coughing. Not a casual cough, something violent, chest-rattling, that bent him nearly in half. Lena's entire demeanor changed. The calm efficiency vanished, replaced by panic. She grabbed his shoulders, steadying him, voice rising with concern. Neo, please sit down. You promised you'd take it easy. Neo, not a lover. A name. A familiar name. The young man straightened slowly, waving off her concern with a weak smile. I'm fine, Lena. Just the usual. The usual is getting worse, she said, and Damien heard the fear in her voice. You need to go back to the clinic. We'll find a way to pay. We can't afford it. You know we can't. I don't care about the money, Neo. I care about you. Brother. The realization hit Damien like a silent blow to the chest. Her younger brother. He watched as Lena fussed over Neo, straightening his jacket, checking his temperature with the back of her hand. The young man, fragile, sick, clearly struggling, let her mother him with patient affection. I'm working extra shifts, Lena said quietly, and Mr. Cross pays well. We'll figure it out. Neo's expression darkened. I don't like you working for that man. Everyone says he's dangerous. He is dangerous, Lena agreed. But he doesn't bother me. I'm just the maid, invisible. The word hit Damien harder than any bullet. Invisible. He watched them walk away together, Lena supporting her brother's weight, and something inside him cracked open. Not jealousy, shame. He'd been so convinced of betrayal, so certain she was sneaking around for some illicit affair, that he'd never considered the simplest explanation. She was taking care of someone she loved. Boss? Rico's voice was carefully neutral. We heading back? Damien didn't answer. He sat in the darkness, watching Lena and Neo disappear into the night, feeling something dangerous unfurl in his chest. Not anger, not even guilt. Protectiveness. The ride home was silent. When they reached the penthouse, Damien went straight to his office and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. He poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and downed it in one burning swallow. Then he poured another and hurled the glass at the wall, watching it shatter into 1,000 glittering pieces. Get me everything, he said into his phone when Rico answered. Lena Hart, Neo Hart, medical records, financial statements, every goddamn detail. Boss? Do it. Now. He ended the call and stood at the window, staring out at the city that bowed to his name, feeling more powerless than he had in 20 years. Because the woman he'd convinced himself was a threat wasn't betraying him at all. She was drowning. Quietly, desperately, invisibly, and for reasons he couldn't name and didn't want to examine. That was so much worse. The background check arrived at 3 a.m. Damien sat in his darkened office, the glow of his laptop the only light as he absorbed every detail of Lena Hart's life. The facts assembled themselves into a picture that made his chest tighten with each line. Neo Hart, age 19. Chronic respiratory condition, deteriorating. 3 hospitalizations in the past year. Medical debt, $47,000 and climbing. Lena's salary barely covered rent and basic expenses. She'd taken on extra cleaning jobs on weekends. Sold her car 6 months ago. Moved from a 1-bedroom to a studio to save money. She was drowning, and she'd never said a word. By dawn, Damien had made 7 calls. By noon, everything had changed. What the hell is this? Lena stood in the kitchen doorway, staring at Cole Mercer as he installed another camera above the service entrance. Cole didn't look up from his work. Security upgrade. Boss's orders. Security upgrade, she repeated, bewildered. There are already cameras everywhere. Now there are more. Cole's tone was matter-of-fact, professional. For your safety. My safety? Lena's voice rose slightly. I'm the maid. Who's threatening the maid? Cole finally met her eyes, and something in his expression made her pause. Boss wants everyone protected. That includes you. Before she could respond, Martha Lynn appeared from the pantry, wiping her hands on her apron. Don't bother arguing, dear. Once Mr. Cross makes up his mind about something, that's the end of it. Lena opened her mouth to protest. But Tyler Graves chose that moment to enter through the service door, keys jingling. Ready when you are, Ms. Hart. She blinked. Ready for what? To take you home. Boss's orders. I take the subway home. I've always taken the subway home. Not anymore. Tyler's expression was apologetic but firm. Boss says it's not safe. I'm to drive you every night from now on. Lena looked between the 3 of them. Cole installing cameras, Martha watching with knowing eyes, Tyler waiting patiently by the door, and felt something like panic flutter in her chest. This is insane, she said quietly. I don't need... The car's waiting, Ms. Hart. Tyler interrupted gently. She wanted to refuse, to march upstairs and demand answers from Damien Cross himself. But something in Tyler's expression told her it wouldn't matter. The decision had already been made, and she was just expected to comply, like everything else in this house. Damien watched the exchange from the second-floor balcony, hidden in shadow. He saw the confusion on Lena's face, the frustration in her posture as Tyler escorted her to the car, saw the way she glanced back at the penthouse, as if sensing she was being watched. You know she's going to figure it out eventually, Rico said from behind him. Damien didn't turn around. Figure what out? That you've lost your damn mind over her. Rico moved to stand beside him, following his gaze to the departing car. Cameras, armed escorts, what's next? A tracker in her phone? The idea had occurred to him. Damien said nothing. Rico sighed. You're crossing a line, boss. A big one. I'm keeping my people safe. She's not your people. She's your maid. And you're treating her like she's... Rico paused, searching for words. Like she's something precious. The observation landed like a knife between his ribs. Damien's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. "Just be careful," Rico said quietly. "Men like us don't get to have precious things. Not without paying for it in blood." The phone arrived 2 days later. Damien had it delivered during Lena's shift, placed on the kitchen counter in a sleek black box with a single card. "For emergencies, keep it on you. DC." He watched from the kitchen entrance as she discovered it, saw her fingers trace the edges of the box before opening it. The latest model. Unlimited data. Already programmed with his number, Rico's number, Cole's number. Everything she might need. She stared at it for a long moment, then closed the box with deliberate care and set it aside. Went back to washing dishes like it didn't exist. Damien stepped into the kitchen. "You're not going to use it?" Lena's shoulders tensed, but she didn't turn around. "I have a phone, Mr. Cross." "That phone is 5 years old with a cracked screen." "It works. This one works better." She finally turned to face him, sudsy water dripping from her hands. Her eyes held something he'd never seen before. Not fear, but defiance. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "The cameras. The driver. Now a phone." She crossed her arms. "You're trying to control me." The accusation stung more than it should have. "I'm trying to keep you safe." "Why?" The question was almost a plea. "I'm nobody to you. I clean your house. That's all." "So why do you suddenly care if I'm safe?" "Because you're drowning and won't ask for help. Because your brother is dying and you're killing yourself trying to save him. Because when I see you, I forget what I am." The answers crowded his throat, but Damien swallowed them all. His jaw clenched, eyes haunted by truths he couldn't speak. "Keep the phone," he said finally, voice rough. "That's not a request." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "You can't fix people by owning them, Mr. Cross." The words were soft, sad, and they hit him like a physical blow. He stood frozen in the doorway, back to her, fists clenched at his sides. "I'm not trying to own you," he said quietly. "Then what are you trying to do?" He didn't have an answer. Or rather, he had too many answers. None of them appropriate for a man like him to say to a woman like her. So he left without another word, feeling her eyes on his back all the way down the hall. He heard her crying at 11 p.m. Damien had been working late, reviewing shipping manifests in his office when the sound drifted through the quiet penthouse. Soft, muffled, like she was trying desperately not to be heard. He followed it to the laundry room. The door was cracked open, and through the gap, he could see her sitting on the floor, back against the dryer, phone pressed to her ear. Her face was streaked with tears. "I know, Neo. I know it hurts." Her voice broke. "But the surgery costs too much. Even with my salary and the extra jobs, I can't." She stopped, listening. No, you're not a burden." "Don't ever say that." Damien's hand gripped the doorframe hard enough to hurt. "We'll figure something out," Lena continued, wiping at her eyes. "We always do. I promise. I promise I won't let anything happen to you." But the promise sounded hollow even to Damien's ears. Because they both knew the truth. There was no way out. No miracle coming. Just mounting debt and a clock running down. Lena ended the call and buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Damien stood in the darkness, watching her fall apart, and felt something inside him shatter irrevocably. He turned and walked back to his office with purpose, made one call, spoke 4 sentences. Neo Hart, respiratory specialist, best in the city, cover everything, anonymous. By morning, $75,000 had been wired to the clinic. 3 days later, Damien stood on his balcony at sunset, scotch in hand, when he heard her voice drift up from the courtyard below. "I don't understand," Lena was saying into her phone, pacing the garden path. "An anonymous donor? For the full amount?" Damien couldn't hear Neo's response, but he saw Lena's hand fly to her mouth, saw her knees buckle slightly as the reality hit. "They said we can schedule the surgery for next week," she whispered. "Neo, you're going to be okay. You're actually going to be okay." She dissolved into tears again, but this time they were different. Relief, joy, disbelief. Damien watched her cry happy tears and felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. Hope, not for himself, for her, for the brother who'd get to live, for the debt that would disappear like it never existed. "Boss?" He turned to find Martha standing in the doorway, a knowing look on her weathered face. "Don't," he said quietly. Didn't say anything. But her eyes said everything. She'd seen him watching Lena. Seen the cameras, the phone, the car service. Seen the way emotion flickered behind his cold stare when he thought no one was looking. "She's breaking you," Martha said gently. "In the best way possible." Damien turned back to the balcony, watching Lena dance in circles, phone pressed to her ear, laughing through tears. "I know," he admitted, and for once, he didn't try to fight it. The clinic's transformation happened overnight. Lena arrived for Neo's pre-surgery consultation to find everything different. New security cameras, armed guards at the entrance, a private wing that hadn't existed before. "When did all this happen?" she asked the receptionist. The woman smiled. "Recent renovations. A generous donor wanted to ensure patient safety." Lena's eyes narrowed. "The same anonymous donor who paid for my brother's surgery?" "I couldn't say, ma'am." But Lena knew. She didn't understand how or why, but she knew. "You need to stop," Rico said, cornering Damien in his office. Damien didn't look up from his laptop. "Stop what?" "This. All of this," Rico gestured expansively. "The clinic security. The money. Boss, you're not being subtle anymore. People are noticing." "Let them notice." "People like Marco Valen?" Rico's voice dropped. "Because his men were spotted near the clinic yesterday. He's asking questions about who's funding a nobody kid's medical treatment." That got Damien's attention. His eyes went cold. Define near. 2 blocks away. Watching. Waiting. Rico leaned against the desk. "Emotions make kings weak, boss. You taught me that. And right now, you're showing the world your weakness." "She's not my weakness." "Then what is she?" Damien's hand trembled, just once, barely perceptible, as he reached for his coffee. Rico saw it and went very still. "Boss? Get out." "Damien." "I said get out!" Rico left, but his words hung in the air like smoke. Emotions make kings weak. Damien stared at his trembling hand, hating it, hating the loss of control, hating that Rico was right. But most of all, hating that he couldn't stop. Across the city, Marco Valen smiled. He sat in his office, fingers steepled, listening as his man delivered the report. Damien Cross wired $75,000 to a clinic for a nobody kid named Neo Hart. Sister works as his maid. He's got her under armed escort, cameras everywhere, the full protection detail. Marco's smile widened. Damien Cross doesn't protect maids. Exactly, boss. Which means she matters. Marco leaned back in his chair, already planning. And anything that matters to Damien Cross is something I can use. Lena cornered Damien in the hallway that evening. "I need to talk to you," she said, voice firm. He'd been expecting this. I'm busy. Mr. Cross. She stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Someone paid for my brother's surgery. Someone upgraded the clinic's security. Someone's been watching out for us, and I know, it was you. Damien's expression went carefully blank. You're mistaken. I'm not. Her eyes searched his face. Why? Why would you do this? Because you were crying. Because your brother is dying. Because when I see you, I remember what it feels like to be human. I don't know what you're talking about, he said coldly, moving past her. Her hand caught his arm, light, tentative. Thank you. The touch burned through his shirt. Damien froze, every muscle locked, fighting the urge to turn around, to cup her face, to tell her the truth. Instead, he pulled away and kept walking. Mr. Cross? Get back to work, Ms. Hart. The words came out harsher than intended. He heard her sharp intake of breath, felt the weight of her hurt following him down the hall. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because if he stopped, he'd have to face what he was becoming. And that terrified him more than any enemy ever had. Later that night, Damien was heading to his office when he nearly collided with Lena in the darkened hallway. She'd been carrying linens again, and this time, neither of them moved. Thank you, she said again, softer this time. For my brother. I don't know why you did it, but thank you. The hallway was dim, lit only by the city lights filtering through the windows. Her face was shadowed, but her eyes caught the light. And in them, Damien saw everything he'd been trying to avoid. Gratitude, trust, something deeper he didn't dare name. You're welcome, he said before he could stop himself. The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Lena smiled, small, sad, understanding, and continued down the hall. Damien stood frozen in the darkness, watching her go, feeling his carefully constructed walls crumble a little more. He turned away before she could look back and see the truth written on his face, that she'd already become the thing he couldn't afford to lose, and there was no going back from that. The call came during dinner service, but Lena never made it to the table. Ray Doyle sprinted through the dining room, eyes wide, breathless. Miss Hart, your phone. It's urgent. The way he said urgent made every conversation die. Damien lifted his head, fork suspended midair. Lena rose slowly, napkin falling from her lap. What is it? She asked, voice already shaking. Ray handed her the phone. She listened for 3 seconds. Then she screamed. No, ragged, animal, primal. The kind of scream that tore wallpaper off walls and carved silence into bone. Chairs scraped. Martha dropped a tray. Cole's gun was in his hand before he even stood. Lena's knees buckled, phone slipping from her grasp and clattering across the marble. Damien crossed the room faster than anyone had ever seen him move. He caught her elbows, steadying her as she sobbed so hard she couldn't speak. What happened? Damien demanded, voice low and violent. My brother, she choked. Neo, he's gone. They took him from the clinic. They said. Her words dissolved into shaking. Ray retrieved the phone, screen still lit with the last message. NEO Hart. Room empty. Staff tied. Taken. Damien felt his blood turn to ice. Around him, the walls seemed to contract. Cole was already on his radio, barking orders. Rico's face drained of color. Tyler sprinted toward the elevator. Lena clutched Damien's suit jacket with both trembling hands. Please, Damien, please. He's all I have. He's all... Her voice cracked on the last word. Something inside Damien cracked with it. He wrapped his arms around her, not tentatively, but like someone desperate to keep something from falling apart. His hands were large against her back, trembling once before he forced them still. "We'll get him," Damien whispered against her hair. "I promise you. I swear it." His voice was raw, scraped clean of arrogance and armor. Everyone in the room stared. They had never heard Damien promise anything. A sudden vibration rattled through Damien's pocket, the secure device. Only a handful of numbers had that access. He slid the phone open. A single text. "You've gone soft, Cross." The room felt suddenly colder. He didn't respond. His thumb hovered, then lowered. His jaw ticked once, twice. Then he went utterly, terrifyingly quiet. Rico watched him carefully, studying the pale tension across Damien's cheekbones. He had seen the boss angry. He had seen him cold. But this silence, the way Damien's pupils constricted to points, the tightness in his breathing, this was different. This was the silence of a man who had already decided someone would die. "Boss," Rico murmured slowly. "Just say the word." A video notification pinged. Damien tapped it. Static. Flicker. Then Neo, tied to a chair, wrists purple and raw, hair matted to his forehead. A gloved hand grabbed his chin and lifted his head toward the camera. Neo's breath rattled, eyes swollen. "This boy means something to you," a voice said from behind the camera. Marco Vallon. Unmistakable. Arrogant. Cruel. "Funny. I didn't know you dealt in weakness." Neo coughed painfully. "Lena, run." The hand slapped him viciously. Neo's head whipped sideways, teeth cutting his lip. Blood smeared his chin. Lena screamed again, reaching for the screen, but Damien locked his arm around her waist, holding her still, not roughly, but to keep her from collapsing. "Look at you, Cross," Marco taunted. "All that power, all that fear you built in the streets, and a maid brings you to your knees." The feed cut. Damien's thumb pressed the screen so hard the phone casing creaked. A different part of himself woke up. The ancient part. The monster he kept chained. Rico swallowed. "We knew Marco would make a move eventually, but this..." "He wants to drag you out," Cole muttered. "Pull you into his territory. You step foot there, he'll have snipers on the roof and men at every window." "Then we take the roof," Tyler said. Rico glared. "This is a trap." Lena twisted around, grabbing Damien's lapels, forcing him to look at her with hollow, terrified eyes. "Please, they'll kill him. He hasn't been well. He needs medication. He won't last long." Her voice broke again. "He's all I have, Damien. All I have left of my family. They're all gone. He's sick. He's scared, and I..." Her breath hitched. "I can't lose him too." Damien didn't breathe. He stared down at her like she was the first sunrise he'd ever seen, and the first funeral. Slowly, he lifted one of her hands from his chest and pressed it flat against his heartbeat. Steady, relentless, pounding. "You won't lose him," Damien said quietly. "Not while I breathe." His fingers threaded into her hair, forehead dropping until it touched hers. For one heartbeat, the Mafia king looked like a boy drowning. Martha quietly closed the dining room doors. Staff backed away as if intruding on a moment too intimate, too painful. Rico stepped closer, voice low. "If you go into Marco's territory, you won't come out unbloodied. It's going to cost us men. Maybe half our arsenal." Damien didn't blink. "Then reload." Rico hesitated, throat bobbing. "Damien, think." "I have." Damien's gaze sharpened painfully. "I thought about Neo strapped to a chair, and Lena's scream, and how Marco smiled while doing it." He exhaled once, voice dropping to something inhuman. I thought enough. Lena clutched Damien's jacket, staring up at him with tears streaming down her face. You could die, she whispered. Don't. Please, don't die for me. Without hesitation, better I die, Damien said, than live in a world where you suffer. Cole froze mid-step. Tyler leaned against the wall to breathe. Rico looked away, jaw tight. Lena's mouth trembled. Tears spilled faster. She pressed her forehead to his chest. Rico tried one more time. Marco wants this. He baited you. And now I bite, Damien said, voice like a gunshot. He turned to his men. Prep the assault team. Load the vans. Full armor. Suppressors and breach charges. Cole nodded once and sprinted. Tyler, fuel everything. We don't stop. Yes, sir. Martha, keep Lena here. She doesn't leave this building. Martha swallowed. I'll sedate her if I must. Damien's hand tightened on Lena's back at the thought, but he forced himself to nod. Ray Doyle cleared his throat, voice shaky. What should I tell anyone who comes asking where you've gone? Damien lifted his gaze, something cold settling behind his eyes. Tell them the king went hunting. He pried Lena's hands from his jacket gently, like he was giving up air itself. She clung harder. No, no, don't go alone. He'll kill you. Damien, please. He cupped her face in both palms, thumbs brushing tears away. Lena, look at me. She did. If Neo were mine. His voice cracked for the first time, too low for anyone but her to hear. I would burn the city for him. Her breath stuttered. I'm terrified, she admitted. So am I, Damien confessed softly. Because losing him means losing you. That admission nearly buckled Rico's knees. Damien kissed her forehead, a touch quick, desperate, sacred. I'll bring him home. Then he turned. Lena screamed his name again, raw, desperate, breaking. But Cole held her back, whispering apologies. Rico walked beside Damien through the hallway toward the armory, voice low. You're walking into Valen's jaws. Damien's face didn't change. He took my weakness. He picked up a rifle. I'll take his world. Rico nodded once, fear and loyalty warring behind his eyes. Damien strapped on body armor, holstered knives, loaded magazines, checked the chamber. The monster had teeth again. A final text buzzed on his secure device. Marco's number. Let's see how soft you've become. Damien typed nothing in response. He didn't need words. When he stepped into the elevator, Rico asked quietly, What's the kill order? Damien's eyes glowed like embers. First person I see who isn't Neo dies. And Valen? Damien's lips curled in a dead smile. He dies last. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing off the warmth of Lena's sobs, sealing Damien's humanity behind metal and regret. Above, storm clouds gathered as the Cross Syndicate prepared to paint the night red. The armory smelled like oil and cold metal, and the fluorescent lights hummed with the same steady insistence as a heart under pressure. Men moved with a silent choreography they'd practiced 1,000 times before. Check the gas, test the round, fold the stock, and press it back until the click felt like an oath. Cole sat at a steel table, blade in hand, stropping the edge until it shone like a promise. Tyler rumbled between bays, loading hardened cases into the back of armored vans with the meticulousness of a man who had to make sure nothing failed tonight. Rico moved like he belonged to both worlds at once, calm authority in a suit, hands bending metal and checking seals. He barked one-word orders that fell into place. Suppressors, breach charges, Silent entry. Chevrons of men dressed in black slid into body armor, plate after plate clipping into place like the closing of a shell. Someone checked maps, another traced routes on a tablet, eyes scanning blueprints until the plan lived inside their mouths. There was no chatter beyond what was necessary. Even the radios seemed to hold their breath. Upstairs, the penthouse felt suddenly fragile. Too fragile to remain alone in it. The chandeliers that hung like pale moons threw weak, tremulous light across the Persian rugs. Damien stood in his office, coatless, sleeves rolled up, the line of his forearm a map of quiet strength. He had always been a man who could steel himself, tuck away any fissure and keep going. Tonight, he paced with a restlessness that made the floorboards creak in places they never had before. Lena stood in the doorway like a figure caught between two lights. Her hair was unbrushed, eyes red from crying, but there was that stubborn set to her jaw. One of the small, defiant things that had pulled at Damien from the day she arrived. She had asked to see him alone. She had no right. Every instinct in his syndicate told him to keep her secure, keep her handed off to the women who would drug her into safety. But she had stood in the corridor, crossing her arms like a young soldier, and said, "I want to speak to you." He had not expected to feel exposed when she entered, but he did. "You don't have to do this," she said immediately, voice small but fierce. "You don't have to risk yourself for us, for Neo, for me." He laughed once, a sound that was half humor and half a thing without shape. "Do you think I asked permission?" "Lena?" She took another step inside and closed the distance between them. The office, filled with maps and a few trophies of a life built on obedience, suddenly felt too intimate. She looked at him the way people look at someone standing on a cliff, with fear, and with the naive hope he might step back. "You could die," she repeated, placing both hands on the edge of his desk until her knuckles whitened. The rain had started outside in earnest, the city's neon lights slicing the wet streets into a smear of color. He could hear the traffic like distant thunder. The world sounded like something being washed. "You could lose everything," she said. "And I can't be the reason." For a long second, he simply watched her. The machine that had been his life whirred low in the background. Phones, quiet footsteps, the soft click of radio transmissions, but all of it faded around the barrage of her words. He felt his control slipping in a way that wasn't fear exactly. He felt a tenderness so sharp it was almost pain. I am not such a man that I can walk away from something when I decide it must not be," he said. The words were clumsy, stripped of the practiced rhetoric he used when speaking to rivals. They sounded like a confession. Lena's eyes widened. "That's not what I meant." He cut her off with a small sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. "You make me weak, Lena." Silence widened. She looked like she might step back, offended or frightened. Instead, she closed the space again and reached up. Her hand met his cheek with a feather-light touch, and then pressed like an anchor, steadying him. He froze. An animal responding to warmth after long starvation. In that moment, the fortress he had built around himself seemed to crumble one stone at a time. "You make me weak," he repeated, his voice raw and small. "I don't know how to be anything else when you are near." Her fingers trembled, hovering at the ridge of his jaw. He let his eyes close, feeling the wetness of tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed. She was trying to be brave for him, but he saw the rawness beneath her courage. Neo's cough, the clinic's antiseptic smell, the way Lena had held her brother's hand when he'd been fevered. All the small things she thought he didn't notice were braided together inside him now, and the braid was tight enough to hurt. He inhaled, then leaned toward her so close their breaths mixed. Outside, the rain hammered the glass and the city blurred into streaked neon. Electric blues and reds smeared like an impressionist painting. The world had never looked more beautiful and more doomed in the same second. "If I die tonight," he whispered, the words a vow he'd never spoken to anyone, "know it was for you." She caught the intention of the sentence in a heartbeat, and it was as if the room tilted. Lena's hands flew up to his face. "Don't talk like that," she breathed. "I'm not asking you to distract me," he said. "I'm telling you what I will do. I will bring him back." Tremor in his voice made the promise less like a threat and more like a prayer. He barely recognized it as his own. Lena pressed her forehead to his, then stepped back a single pace distance as if to brace herself against a gale. "Then go," she whispered. "Bring him back." Her voice broke on the last word. "Please." He wanted to stay. In that office with the map on the wall and the little ceramic cup she once left on his desk filled with tea, he wanted to stand guard forever and simply watch her breathe. But duty wore the mask of inevitability. He straightened, hands clenching into fists at his sides. Rico was at the door, watching them like a man watching a ritual he had long known would end in fire. He stepped forward abruptly, folding his hands behind his back to hide the tremble. "We move in 30, he said. "Everything's ready." Damien nodded once. He wanted to barricade her inside the office, swear on some sacred thing that nothing would touch her. But he knew that in the end, staying would only make her a target. He stepped toward her now with something heavier than resolve, tenderness wrapped in steel. "You stay here," he told her quietly. "Somebody will never leave your side." She smiled, a shaky, astonished thing that made something in his chest crack clean through. "I don't want them to hide me," she said. "I want you back." "Then I'll come back," Damien said, and for the first time he sounded uncertain, a dangerous human tremor in his voice. He reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek with the back of his hand, the motion so gentle that Rico looked away, jaw tight. Outside, the rain thickened into a curtain. The neon of the city blurred further, making the streets look like an angry watercolor. Men in the armory checked their gear one last time. The vans began to roll slowly into the night, tires hissing on the wet pavement like whispered threats. Damien walked to the door. He paused and turned once to look at Lena. She was still there, hands folded in her lap, eyes squeezed shut as if she were praying. He ducked his head and pressed his lips to her forehead. A kiss, quick and desperate, an unspoken benediction. "Stay alive," he said, his voice a low command that carried all the tenderness he had no other way to show. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Rico stepped beside him, the man who had always known when to push and when to pull back. "We go now," Rico said. He glanced at Damien, the question plain in the set of his mouth. Damien did not look back. He walked out into the hallway, rainlight trailing after him, and let the armored elevator take him down to whatever waited beneath the city. He didn't hear Lena's sobbing as the door closed on the floor above. At least not until the van's engines roared and the world outside swallowed the sound. Rico's hand brushed Damien's shoulder, a quick, steadying pressure. He did not ask about the possibility of loss. He did not voice the word if. He had known the boss too long to hope for fate's mercy. "Bring him back," Rico said, low, urgent. Damien's reply was iron and a quiet, terrible love. "I will." Rain hammered the rusted roof of the warehouse like war drums, drowning the shouts and footsteps beneath a sheet of roaring sound. The walls were old brick and steel ribs, windows caged in iron mesh, shadows stretching long from the skeletal towers of shelving. A single bulb flickered overhead, buzzing like an insect on its last breath. Neo's ragged coughing echoed from somewhere deep within the labyrinth of crates and machinery, thin, fragile, and sharp enough to cut through metal. The cross convoy came in silence. Then Tyler floored the accelerator. The first van slammed through the perimeter gates with a scream of tortured hinges. Metal buckled. Sparks flew into the wet dark like fireflies gone rabid. The convoy behind him fanned out, tires hissing on the flooded concrete. The warehouse guards barely had time to aim. Tyler popped the door while the van was still rolling and leapt out with a shout, drawing fire toward himself like a madman offering his chest to the storm. Bullets cracked the night open. Steel crates exploded into splinters of rust and nailheads. Rico moved in clean arcs, gun kicking against his shoulder. Every shot a whisper of death. Men dropped where they stood, clutching chests before they even understood they'd been hit. Cole didn't waste bullets. He slipped between shadows, blade in hand, and throats opened like red petals blooming under his silent steps. You had to look twice to notice bodies collapsing along his path. His expression never changed. Damien strode in the center of the assault, coat soaked, head unbowed, eyes two dead stars. Bullets screamed around him, thunking into crates and ricocheting off steel beams. But he walked forward as if already dead and unafraid of dying twice. When one of Marco's men rushed him with a shotgun, Damien's hand shot out, twisted the barrel aside, and crashed an elbow into the man's skull. The guard folded, lifeless. "Warehouse clear left!" Tyler yelled, sliding behind a forklift as bullets clipped sparks off the metal spokes. "Right is stacked!" Rico barked back, switching to his second pistol without looking. His spent magazine clattered on the wet floor. Another body slumped. Somewhere deeper, Neo coughed again. Wet, broken, terrified. Damien heard it like a knife to the ribs. He turned toward the sound instinctively, cutting across the open aisle. Just as overhead lights snapped alive, flooding the room with cruel white. A dozen red lasers traced lines across his chest. He didn't flinch. High on a steel catwalk, Marco Valen leaned against the railing, smirk sharp as glass. He wore a crimson suit like a mockery, the king who believed color made him immortal. Around him stood snipers and riflemen, guns trained down like the cold eyes of vultures. "Well, well," Marco called, voice amplified by the rattling acoustics. "The Ghost King crawls out of his palace. All this for a maid's sick brother?" Rico swore under his breath. Damien tilted his chin. "Let him go!" Marco laughed, a brittle, ugly sound that echoed against steel beams. "You've gone soft, Cross. The entire city is laughing. The legend, undone by a girl who scrubs floors." A flicker crossed Damien's face, less than a breath. But Rico saw it. Not pain, not humiliation, love, and rage layered beneath like wet gunpowder. Marco snapped his fingers. 4 riflemen opened fire. Crates detonated, wood liquefying into splinters. Cole tackled Damien behind a forklift, knives flashing as he cut down a guard who rounded too slow. Tyler returned fire, bullets ringing off the railing above. "Get him out of here!" Rico yelled. Damien shoved him off. "Find Neo." Rico hesitated, first time in a decade, then nodded and vanished into the labyrinth. Marco vaulted off the railing, landing on a lower platform with the grace of a man who believed he controlled the board. "Come then, Cross. Show me what weakness makes you bleed." Damien moved. He sprinted toward the catwalk ladder, bullets snapping at his heels. He grabbed the rungs, climbing fast, hands slipping in blood. Someone's, maybe his. A guard leaned over, firing point blank, but Damien rammed the ladder, sending the man falling into a crate stack. He scrambled up the last stretch, vaulting onto the catwalk. Marco met him halfway. The first punch cracked Damien's jaw. The second hit his ribs, white pain flaring. Marco was faster than rumors claimed. "You should have stayed cold," he hissed. "Love is poison." Damien caught his fist midair and twisted. "So drink it," he growled, He slammed Marco into the railing. Metal screamed. They traded blows, each more brutal than the last, fists thudding like hammers in wet cloth. Damien's blood soaked through his shirt, shoulder, ribs, a shard of steel embedded in his side. But he didn't slow. Marco pulled a knife, not elegant, just practical. He lunged. Damien pivoted, but the blade carved across his ribs, hot fire in its wake. Marco's grin widened. He pressed in, merciless. "You're bleeding out," Marco whispered. "The girl will cry over your corpse tonight." Damien lifted his gun and shot him. Once. In the shoulder. Marco screamed, dropping the knife as his arm dangled uselessly. A second shot split bone. Marco dropped to one knee, hand clutching the ruined joint. "Not to kill," Damien said, voice low. "To humble." Marco spat blood. "Mercy? From you?" Damien's eyes hardened. "Oh, that wasn't mercy." He backhanded him so hard Marco sprawled onto his back, sliding dangerously close to the railing. Smoke filled the air from smoldering crates below. Men screamed. Tyler's van roared across the floor, slamming into a barricade of stacked pallets, showering the catwalk in splinters. Below, Rico reappeared, Neo slung over his shoulder, wrists freed, coughing but alive. Rico barked, "Damien, get down here." Damien turned, looking down. Neo lifted his head weakly, eyes glistening, face pale. "You look like hell," Damien said. Neo's lips cracked into a smile. "She loves you," he rasped. "Idiot." Something in Damien's chest cracked, not like a bone, but like armor. He laughed. A sound no one on that battlefield had ever heard from him. Pure, genuine, horrified joy. It echoed in the rafters like a prayer dragged into daylight. Marco, furious beyond sanity, grabbed the dropped knife with his good hand and lunged for Damien's spine. Rico raised his gun too late. Damien turned, faster than any man had the right to. He fired. The bullet slammed into Marco's kneecap, shattering bone, sending him screaming onto the steel grate. Marco writhed, clutching his leg. "Mercy, please, Damien, please!" Damien looked down at him, blood seeping through his shirt, breath trembling. For a moment, he considered. He thought of Lena's tears, Neo's coughing, the way Marco's men had dragged a sick boy from treatment. No. He raised his gun. The shot was final. Marco's body stilled, eyes emptying to nothing. Silence fell in the space between gunshots, as if the building itself stopped breathing. Rico held Neo closer. Tyler lowered his rifle, jaw slack. Cole flicked gore off his knife and sheathed it with surgical grace. Damien's knees wobbled. He breathed through pain like swallowing light. He walked the length of the catwalk toward the ladder, then descended slowly, every rung painting a new streak of blood on the metal. Neo reached for him weakly. Damien pushed Rico aside and scooped the boy into his arms gently. "You're safe now," he murmured, voice hoarse. "I've got you." Neo's head fell against his chest, sweat cooling on his brow. "She's gonna kill you," he mumbled. Damien smiled through the blood and dust. "She'll have to get in line." Tyler shouted for medical. Cole had already secured the perimeter. Smoke crawled up into the rafters. Outside, the rain finally thinned. Neon reflected off the puddles like broken jewels. Sirens, or maybe thunder, rolled in the distance. Damien walked into the storm with Neo in his arms, his men flanking him. Behind them, the warehouse burned, flames devouring Marco's empire shard by shard. A kingdom collapsing into ash. The king who walked away tonight was broken and reborn. Smoke curled upward in ragged black ribbons. rising from the warehouse ruins like the dying breath of a fallen beast. Orange flames still licked at the shattered walls, hissing as rain smothered embers into steaming ash. Sirens echoed far off, blurred by the storm. The world smelled of metal and rain and gunpowder, of endings. Damien carried Neo through the ruined gate, arms locked, jaw clenched, blood trailing down his side in a slow crimson thread. Neo's head rested against his chest, eyelids fluttering, breath shallow but present. Rico and Cole flanked him, weapons still raised, scanning for shadows. Tyler paced just ahead, clearing a path through twisted fencing and debris. Some distance away, under a street lamp that painted the pavement gold, Lena waited. She stood soaked to the bone, hair plastered against her cheeks, coat heavy with rain. Hands pressed to her mouth, shaking. As the shape of Damien emerged through smoke, she staggered forward, legs buckling before she even reached them. Her knees hit the wet concrete with a splash. "Neo!" Her voice cracked on the first syllable. Rico set the boy gently down beside her. Lena's hands hovered over her brother's face, terrified to touch, terrified not to. "Neo, look at me. Please." Neo coughed, barely conscious, but he managed a broken smile. "Told you. Didn't need the nurse," he whispered. She sobbed a laugh, pressing her face to his hair. Then her gaze lifted. Damien stood not 3 feet from her, drenched, coat torn, shirt soaked dark with blood and rain. Smoke curled behind him, clinging to his silhouette like a crown forged from ghosts. He looked down at her, and something inside him simply collapsed. Not bone, not muscle, something older. He lowered to one knee, then another. His men froze, eyes widening. They had seen Damien Cross kneel only once, when putting a gun to a man's throat. Never like this. Lena stared, disbelief breaking across her features. "Damien, you're hurt. Sit. We need to..." Her hands flew to his face, trembling, searching. She brushed dirt from his cheek, touched his split lip, traced the blood drying at his temple. He leaned into that warmth like a starving man offered bread. "I thought you'd die," she choked. "You could have died because of us. Because of me. Because of you," he whispered, voice cracked and raw. "I lived." His breath trembled against her palm. He wasn't bleeding out. Not anymore. The tremor in his body was something else entirely. Fear. For her. For Neo. For what almost was. His eyes, usually cold, calculating, distant, glowed with something terrifyingly human. "I don't kneel," he murmured. "Not to kings. Not to gods." His hand slid up, fingers curling gently around her wrist. "But I kneel to you." Rain pattered harder, masking the sound of Rico clearing his throat and looking anywhere but here. Lena's lips parted, shock, confusion, panic swirling all at once. "Damien, you don't have to..." "I do," he interrupted. "You're the only person who can break me. And I want..." He swallowed. "I want you to." Her breath faltered. His thumb brushed her cheek, wiping tears that were immediately replaced by more. "Marry me." It wasn't barked like a command. It wasn't sharp or smug. It was barely air. Fragile. Terrifying. Lena blinked in disbelief, shaking her head as if clearing fog. People don't propose like this," she whispered. "Covered in blood, standing in fire, after killing." "If I had waited," he breathed. "If I had gone home. If I slept another night pretending I could live without you. I would have lost courage." And Damien Cross did not lose courage. Except now, kneeling in rain and smoke, shaking under her fingertips. Lena's voice cracked. "Damien, I can't live in your world. I can't carry guns and corpses and—" He took her face gently in both hands. "I'm not asking you to be a queen of blood. I'm asking you to be the reason I put the gun down when I come home." Her tears came harder, shoulders shaking. "There's danger," she whispered. "Always danger." His jaw tightened. "Then every danger will fear your name." Something in his voice, feral promise layered under devotion, made Rico look away completely, jaw clenched. Cole shifted uncomfortably. Tyler swallowed hard, eyes stinging. Lena stared at Damien as if seeing him truly for the first time. The monster. The protector. The man who walked through bullets for a boy who wasn't his. The man who knelt. "I don't want to lose you," she breathed. "You won't," he promised. "How can you possibly know?" "Because if something tries, I'll burn down every street. Every god, every king who touches you." His forehead rested against hers, breath shaking. "I thought I knew power. But love," his voice cracked. "Love terrifies me more." She closed her eyes. Neo stirred weakly beside them. "Say yes, Lena," he murmured, voice thin, "before he bleeds all over the road." Damien let out a breathless, shaky laugh, and she felt it tremble against her skin. Her fingers tangled in his hair, grounding him. "Damien, I'm scared." "So am I," he admitted. A beat of rain. Silence thick enough to choke. Then, quietly, "Yes." His head lifted sharply, eyes widening. "Yes," she repeated, voice breaking into a smile. "If danger is coming, then it can fear us both." The breath he released was almost a sob. He pulled her into him, arms crushing, face buried in her shoulder. His entire body trembled, shuddered, unraveled in her embrace. Rico turned his back, wiping at his face with the corner of his sleeve. "Dust in the rain," he muttered. Cole pretended he didn't hear. Tyler just stared, stunned. Damien pulled back, cupping Lena's face again, forehead pressed to hers. "You're sure?" "No," she whispered honestly. "But love isn't supposed to feel safe." He exhaled, something ancient and locked finally breaking free. Police sirens approached, distant but no longer ignorable. Rico cleared his throat. "Boss, we should move." Damien nodded slowly, but his eyes never left Lena's. "Come home with me." She squeezed Neo's hand. "Us. We come home." Neo rolled his eyes with fragile humor. "God, you two are exhausting." Damien lifted him effortlessly, cradling him once more. Lena stood and wrapped her arms around Damien's waist, steadying him. He leaned into her without shame. Together, surrounded by smoke and rain and ruin, they walked toward the waiting convoy. And every shadow that watched them that night learned a single, terrifying truth. A king who kneels for love does not kneel to anyone else. Rain had become a comfort. Weeks slipped by, the city healing over old wounds like scabs under neon. Lena's clothes now hung in Damien's closet. Brushes on his bathroom counter. Laughter in rooms that once echoed like tombs. Each morning she woke in silk sheets, sunlight spilling through glass walls, and found Damien already awake, reading reports with tea steaming beside his hand. Her tea. He drank it with a smile he never showed anyone else. Neo occupied a suite 2 floors down, guarded by 2 of Damien's best men and treated by doctors flown in from places so prestigious the staff whispered Damien's name like a threat. Not a patient in the city dared complain when his escort swept through hallways. His lungs grew stronger. His eyes brightened. He teased Lena again, alive in ways he never thought he'd feel. Agnes visited only once more. She pressed Lena's hands between her own wrinkled ones and simply nodded, eyes misty, before retiring to a quiet cottage Damien bought her. "I knew," she whispered. "I saw it the day she walked in." The penthouse changed. No, Damien changed. His rage, once volcanic, softened under Lena's steady touch. When she hugged him at the door each evening, he hung his gun on a wall mount instead of carrying it through the house. Cole noticed. Rico noticed. Even Tyler smirked and said nothing. Lena became his compass. Quiet, unshakable. She hummed while dusting his office, placed fresh tea beside stacks of ledgers, and scolded Damien gently if he worked too late. He didn't argue. That alone terrified his men more than any knife. Rumors rippled through the underworld. Whispers behind drinks in low-lit bars. Damien Cross has a weakness. But then Marco's empire collapsed, limb by limb. His lieutenants fled the city. His territory swallowed whole by silent men in black coats. Streets that once bristled with rival colors dimmed, replaced by Damien's shadow. Whispers evolved. Maybe not a weakness. A reason. The king bleeds for his. And fear spread deeper than ever. One evening, Damien walked with Lena and Neo through downtown, streets slick with recent rain. Neon lights gliding across puddles like spilled paint. The air glowed electric blue and red, music drifting from open club doors. People parted instinctively as they passed, eyes averted but curious. Damien's hand rested at Lena's lower back, not possessive, just anchoring. Cole trailed discreetly behind. Rico walked at Damien's side, scanning rooftops and alley mouths. Neo bounced between them, scarf wrapped high, cheeks flushed with cold. "I can't believe I get to walk outside again," he whispered, marveling at simple streetlight glow. Lena grinned at him, swatting his arm. "You always loved trouble." Neo shrugged, winking. "Runs in the family now, I guess." Damien actually smiled. Soft, unarmored. Lena laughed then, head tipped back, voice ringing pure off brick and glass. And instead of jealousy burning Damien's ribs, warmth spread through his chest. Pride. She belonged here. Not locked away, but beside him where the world could see. Rico exhaled through his nose. "Never thought I'd see you happy in neon." Damien watched Lena twirl her brother under a street lamp, her coat flaring like a dancer's skirt. "Neither did I," he said. "Soft?" Rico asked, teasing. Damien's jaw tightened. Not aggressive, simply honest. "They weren't my weakness." His eyes reflected neon fire. "They were my reason." Rico nodded once, deeply. "That's how kings live long." Damien's gaze softened. His fingers reached for Lena's. When she looked back, smiling, he tugged her gently into his side. Her palm slid across his chest, over the heartbeat no bullet had touched. The city lights glinted in her eyes. Cole pretended to watch traffic. Tyler leaned against a street pole, grinning at Neo's terrible jokes. Even the wind slowed to listen. For a moment, Damien felt it. The peace no bloodshed had ever bought. No ledger ink, no territory. Just this. Lena leaned her head to his shoulder. "You're quieter lately." "Learning," he murmured. "To be gentle?" she teased. "To be human," he corrected. Neo groaned dramatically. "Please don't kiss in public. The city is traumatized enough." Damien chuckled. A sound so rare Rico blinked just to confirm it. Lena elbowed Neo. He pretended injury. Traffic hissed. Neon buzzed. Life moved. But around Damien Cross, space bent. Respectful. Afraid. And finally, balanced. A late-night news drone zipped overhead, capturing the moment. The unchallenged king walking neon streets not alone, but flanked by purpose, by love, by future. Damien's thumb brushed Lena's knuckles. "This world," he murmured, "is ugly." She squeezed his hand back. "Then we paint it." He turned to her, face unguarded. "Stay with me." She kissed his cheek, soft as silk. "I already moved in, Damien." Neo gagged theatrically. Rico snorted. Cole smirked behind his collar. Damien pulled her closer by the waist, forehead tipping to hers. It wasn't a kiss built on hunger. It was a claim built on trust. The monster finally found his humanity. The king found his queen. The city bowed without kneeling. Beyond them, wet pavement shimmered like constellations fallen to earth. Reflections rippled. 3 figures walking the spine of a kingdom stitched from fear and devotion. Somewhere in the smog of distant rooftops, a rival watched, shook and whispered. "They're not weak." They were unkillable. Damien's voice rumbled low, private. Meant only for Lena. "You're home," she whispered back, fingers threading his. "So are you." Neon buzzed. Rain eased, and the night closed around them, its king and queen walking forward, no longer haunted by silence, but guided by laughter that even the darkness bowed to. If this story moved you even a little, subscribe. It's how we grow this community of hearts that feel deeper than most. Even from your TV, take a second to join us. Your support is everything, and it lets us create more stories just like this.